again as I stand here at the beginnings, and the tale of time told my story with brand new myths for the truth to mend. Here I am bearing arms to fight as I build walls for the blind to see.
We need some enthusiasm. Thank you so much. Wonderful people. We're really excited to be here, and I really would just like one more time for yourselves for waking up today. Today's Thursday, right? You woke up on a Thursday. Some of you have dodged work to come here. We know we still have Abu Bas, and we know what kind of strain we put you under to be here. So we really appreciate your presence, to see your wonderful faces. We really think that this is going to be a fantastic day. We have the Abantu team who's here, everybody with the crew t-shirts. We're here to help you. Thank you so much. Can I have one more clap for you guys? Thank you. I should dance for you. And everybody who was here yesterday knows I can dance. So today we have our first panel. We're really excited for this today. And I want to just begin by introducing the panel and everyone on stage, and then they'll also do their own intros. And just to give you some sense of where we are, and I'll just give you a minute on Abantu. First, I would think perhaps, or what I can say about this panel and the people here, some of the people I'm most excited about, because I think it's people who took ownership of what we were doing, because ultimately Abantu, we did this for the love of Black people. We did this because we love ourselves enough to do something for ourselves. And I think what has been really great is a number of people who've come up to us and said, I think you should do 1, 2, 3, and we're willing to step in these kind of ways. And there have been some really fantastic emails that we've gotten of people who said, hey, you need to do X, Y, Z. We believe that this works for your project. And these women are part of those people very early on. They sent us a mail saying, listen, we know you're working on your program, but we want to be there, and we're going to do this, right? And I think that is the spirit of fallism. People think that we just pen and we don't build anything, but ultimately they said, we're going to be there. Noma Kanjani, we're going to be as part of this thing. And for me, it really is something that they should be the first ones who are going to open Abantu Book Festival. Women in particular, when we talk about Blackness, often it's just something else. After the revolution, we will talk about it after we've gotten land. But right now we're saying that the land will have women who are going to own it. And these women are the ones who have really shown us that they take initiative and take ownership. Some people complain, yeah, we went on the program, we went 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. These ones said, you're going to be part of it. So I really would just like to give a round of applause for them and the wonderful work that they continue to do. The next person I'm really excited to have here, 2 people in fact, is also Skarabo, who's going to be doing our sign language interpretation, and Umam Queen, who's here with her. And I'm really excited, and very honestly, because again, as Abantu, we know that we don't own the monopoly on Blackness. We're learning, we're trying to expand, we're growing. And one of the oversights that I'd made, very ageless in the way I did things, I didn't think about sign language. I didn't think about who are the Black people who are going to be coming here and making sure that this is a very inclusive space. I wish I'd said that I thought about this from the beginning, but I didn't. I got an email from Mom Queen saying that, listen, I think for you, I've seen your festival, we've seen the adverts, what we'd like to do is come and do sign language for you. And as simple as that, it was organized. And that really makes me excited. Working here as curator of this, working with Tando, people are saying, right, we're willing to step in these ways because this is a movement that we need to build. There's no single person. I think fallism has really been great in saying that there's no leader of any movement. This is our revolution here, and we really welcome this. And these are the people who set the tone for how we'd like to work with Abantu. If you want to be here, you're going to put yourself, you're going to insert yourself, bring your hands, bring your feet. We're going to do this, and we're going to build Blackness, and we're going to build that Black future that we want to live in. The other thing, just housekeeping today, we're starting just after 10:30, and you've got your programs in front of you. Can you just clap for Tango, because he's the eye behind this beautiful program. The program is so beautiful that even when we had amendments, and we'd already ordered it, a couple months ago, there's some amendments that we have, some changes to the program that are not there, but you at least have the nice memento of the festival. What we're going to do is then have an amendment page that will be given to you later in the day, and you can see some of the changes. But by and large, it's the same. It just might be some switches in the people who are going to be part of the panels. As you know, here at 12 o'clock we're going to bring, 10 o'clock we're going to start with Land and Liberation. Mbali Matandela, he's going to start instead at 12 o'clock. The other changes you'll see as we go along within the program, one of them notably being Violet Blawayo. She's had a bereavement in her family, so she can't make it. Likewise, Uyewande Omotosho has had a loss in her family as well, so she can't make it as well. But definitely they might not be here physically, but they're here with us in spirit. And feel free to discuss their works. Their works are being sold outside. Feel free to please buy. I know you're landless, but please buy from African Flavor Books. They're fantastic. It's the Helepi couple who own this. They live in Vanderbale Park, and they only sell African literature. There's no Harry Potter that you're going to find there. No, truly, there is no Harry Potter. There's no Eat, Pray, Love, nothing, because they put black people and black literature first. So we really, really need to support them and the amazing work that we're doing, because I think it's important. We want certain things, but we also need to support people when they take the risk to do some of these things. So we're really, really grateful to have the couple there, because they really have a wonderful love of literature. And ultimately, this is a space of black love. And because this is a space of black love, one housekeeping rule, we have an anti-harassment code of conduct here. Because when we talk about black liberation and black politics, we want to make sure that all black people are comfortable, all black people are safe within that space. We're not going to sacrifice certain bodies for the greater black project. Whereas the Fallers say, this revolution will be intersectional or it will be bullshit. So what that means is that in this space, any homophobic, any transphobic, any sexist comments, I don't think this is a space where we're going to talk about racism, because there's no such thing as reverse racism. But really, we're quite serious about this. If anything untoward happens to you, any untoward comments, any unwarranted sexual comments or favors that are demanded from you, please speak to one of us with the t-shirts that say crew, and we will take action. We don't care who you are, how important you are to the revolution, what you did for who or whatever in what year. We're making sure that we're going to get this right. If it's going to take us, if we're going to hold back the revolution another 10 years, it's fine. We're going to make sure we're going to do this with all black people with us here. So that's just very important. Please speak to us if anything happens. So that also means here for the Q&A. We want you to be free, of course. There's no such thing as a stupid question. We're here to learn as black people, but we're also here to learn in a respectful manner. This is why we create these spaces. I've spoken enough. We're going to do this panel until about just after 11:30. Wonderful women are going to begin this. We're really excited to have you. Thank you very much. This is the kind of initiative that really makes us happy to be here. It's the kind of thing that reminds us why the hard work is important. So thank you for doing the work. Thank you.
Okay, is my mic on? So before I start, I just want to thank the organizers of this conference, because this festival, because this is a labor of black love. Black love is this creating spaces for us, elevating each other's voices. So I'm very proud to be here, and all of us are. And so thank you to everyone. Firstly, I'm just going to begin by giving a contextual analysis of why we've chosen to speak on this particular topic. And then we'll open it up for a conversation between us of our experiences in fallist movements. I just want to add that Sandy, Mbali, and I, come from a particular position of within Fallist movements. I come from Wits University, they come from UCT, and so we must acknowledge that we do not reflect, the holistic Black woman experience of Fallism, of erasure, of memory, and of writing. And because we come from historically white universities, we are in a privileged position in terms of having voice, having platforms like this, and so it is within our work and other platforms to make sure that voices of Black feminist women within Fallist movements are diverse. So in 2002, Susan Ndwanje wrote an essay called Gender and the Public Sphere in Africa, Writing Women and Rioting Women. In this essay, she noted that, particularly in the African continent, that women who have written and women who have rioted, protested, etc., for issues of social justice, protested on the streets against colonial oppression, have been different kinds of women. So the women who have rioted, who have been on the streets, have been women of working class backgrounds, women who have had little to no educational, access to education. And writing women were women who had gone to university or finished high school or who had formal jobs. So these two bodies or groups of women operated or expressed political ideas differently. So writing and rioting. But this year, at the Decolonizing Feminism Conference, Professor Phumla Gqola said that a rioting woman and a writing woman can occupy the same body. We can do both at the same time. And we need to actually do both at the same time. The reason why we need to do both at the same time is because Black women's political activism, Black women's labor, Black women's ideas have been erased from public memory. Therefore, as well as Black women who fought under apartheid, who were on the streets, who were shutting things down, their experiences are not reflected, in mainstream discourse. So Black Fallist women like us, we're not only on the streets, we're not only shutting ish down, we're not only engaging in direct action or protests, but we also have made the political investment of writing, of filming, of documenting Black women's efforts in the Fallist movement. Because we don't want to fall into the same trap that Black women within, movements, not only in South Africa, but the wider African continent and the African diaspora have fallen into. And that is the erasure. So for instance, when we speak about the Black consciousness movement in South Africa, we reference Steve Biko, we reference Mbali Matandela, but we hear little about Utenjiwe Mdidzo. We hear little about Uwini Khware, who was the first president of the Black People's Convention. And so, even within the civil rights movement in the United States and the Black Panther Party, etc., we hear little about Black women's political work and ideas, besides individualized narratives of, for instance, in South Africa, Mampele, individualized narratives of Angela Davies, although she wasn't technically a part of the movement, but supported the movement, Black Panther Party, and women like Asata. And so, for us, we have written, we have, like I said, we have filmed, we have recorded songs, Black women singing songs, Black women cooking, being in direct action, Black women bailing people out of jail and making the parts happen, or because we want to guard against that erasure. So it might be clearer to understand, why we are Fallists. We have defined our cause. We are for free, decolonized, intersectional education. That's clear. But what needs more unpacking, like I said, is the reason why we write and write at the same time. And like I said, is to guard against erasure. But beyond guarding against erasure and making sure that our history and our humanity is legitimized, it is a political project. It's an imaginative and transformative political project. It doesn't end at recording. It ends at us analyzing, reflecting on our historical positions, on our present positions, so we can transform, Black women's lives, so that we are not the faces of poverty, where we are not the faces of rape, where we are not the faces, of hate crimes, homophobic crimes. We write and write and record and film and treat, so that we can transform our society. So having done the contextual analysis, I just want to open it up to our conversation between Mbali and Sandy, for them to reflect, their journey within Fallist spaces and their actions to make sure that Black women's memory and political work is legitimized. Also, Sandy.
Sure. Sanbonani Soweto. My name is Sandy Ndelu, but I go by Sandy. So what pops out to me quite prominently when thinking about this issue is perhaps adding on to what Professor Gola argues in terms of rioting and writing being embodied in being simultaneously embodied in one body, right? Is the issue of perhaps rioting and writing being the same thing, right? Particularly in my context, I've been quite interested in writing myself into history, right? How do I make sure that I stand the test of time? How do I make sure that I'm etched into memory, into history, that I'm able to contribute and develop enough so that Black queer trans folks such as myself emerging in 50 years' time have a reference point, on which to develop, right? And so, for example, one could, look at the University of Cape Town, look at what has been called the trans capture, which was an intervention by trans individuals who are affiliated with Fallism at the 1-year anniversary and exhibition of the Rose Must Fall movement, who had stripped naked and created an intervention to counter the misrepresentation and erasure that had been facing within the movement. And for me, that is an act of both writing and rioting at once, right? When that is documented through images, it both speaks in the way that writing would speak, but it's also incredibly disruptive in the same way that a protest would be disruptive. And so perhaps I've been trying to think of ways to do that deliberately then, right? How do I protest and not protest, I'm struggling how to phrase this, but how do I protest and protest with the intention to be historically relevant, to be historically present, right? So how do I think around structuring my protest? Is it simply going to the streets and singing struggle songs and sweating it out? What else can I add to that? Which is writable, right? Which history would be able to freeze in time and keep as a reference point.
So I think something very interesting is how the Fallism movement has been challenging what we see as writing or what we know as writing. So writing isn't necessarily calligraphy. writing can be visual, writing can be it can be oral. You know, we are writing right now. So in the space of fallism, in the movement of fallism, there are many ways in which people were writing and rioting. And I think one of the ways that has been quite I think inspiring, and it just shows what the political imagination can do, is how people are using their bodies to write. So, and their bodies are being used to challenge old narratives of what the body has meant. So, in looking at the protests, the naked protests, so in history, on the African continent, black women rioting naked has historically been a way in which they've rioted. And so now we see history replaying and the patterns of history replaying, but the body is finding new meaning. So a lot of the black women who are involved in such protests have said that, you know, revealing the body as being naked is a sign of the body, of how vulnerable the body is in our society, and how vulnerable certain bodies are in black spaces because of the politics within those spaces, because of the bodies who carry violence in those spaces. So you see how meanings change, and the writing within a body changes, the narrative within bodies change. And historically, the body has meant, in Yoruba culture, how like seeing a naked body, it has meant that it's a curse upon patriarchy. And so you see how women are rewriting that narrative. Yes, it could be analyzed as a curse, but women are giving it meaning, and giving it meaning by saying we are vulnerable. We walk around society naked. We feel naked in our movements, and we feel as if we're being exploited in our vulnerability. So it's interesting to see how writing is not necessarily calligraphy, but it's also using the body to challenge old narratives.
I just want us to reflect on maybe the 2 years of fallist movements and how black women have been represented in mainstream media and political discourse. Because the pattern that I've seen is that it's either you completely invisibilize black women, or you individualize the representation of black women within fallism. For instance, having individual women whose voices, whose images are given light, but without unpacking the genealogy and the fact that we are part of the movement, and negating the fact that I am because you are, and we are because all of us contribute to this movement. So maybe can we reflect on that?
Okay, so I can reflect based on my personal experience. So having been part of the Rhodes Must Fall movement, I was there as a rioting woman, but in that space where we were imagining ourselves as we are here, we started to challenge how to write our narrative about what was taking place within the movement. And so within that space, disruption doesn't only happen where it's seen, right? So disruption happens in your own thoughts, in your own life, and that's indicative of the change that is happening in society. It's both an internal change, but also an external change. So these changes were occurring, and it kind of shaped some of my thinking, and I started to think about erasure and how we could claim back our narratives and ensure that erasure does not repeat itself once again in our history. And so I did research on black women and their experiences in the Rhodes Must Fall movement. And that was not only a way of writing myself into history, but it was a task where I had to write other black women into history and ensure that their history and their experiences are accounted for and are also represented in a way that dignifies them, but also encompasses their full experience. So that research project and the exercises in which the Black women were engaged in, we wrote like our experiences within the movement, but we also shared those experiences orally, and that all formed a narrative of what it meant to be a Black woman. It's not all the Black women, it was only a select few, but that in itself was a revolutionary moment when we realized that we needed to come together and to write this narrative, and we needed to come together and put our experiences together, not to say that they are the same, but to look at the complexities of being Black and being woman in a particular space, and fighting both representations within media, but also fighting who writes about us, how we're written about, and how selective the white gaze is, and ensuring that white gaze does not represent us in a particular way.
And perhaps to add on to that, right? So for me particularly, the tug of war of representation and erasure hasn't only been limited to the white gaze, right? There's been a particularly invasive, toxic gaze from, cisgender heterosexual men, from cisgender women, right? Particularly as, a queer and trans person. And that tug of war has, almost undercut everything I've thought about the movement, everything I've done about and for the movement, and everything I've thought and done about myself, right, over the last 2 years. And so for me, it's kind of been, a cocktail of almost fighting in various directions at once, but also, accepting, people who perhaps want to take it, perhaps who want to call me out, for erasing other people myself, right? In particular at the University of Cape Town, there's a big but hushed, discussion about, the role, let's say, for example, class and ableism plays in representation, right? And how those are silenced, and in many ways have been complicit in that, right? And it's almost been like, and to a certain extent, I also think that perhaps that opens up the conversation about the general sense of the movement and how we failed in reflecting, on representation and erasure. And in each point in our history, in our short history, there's always been like boiling points, right? So, for example, the Black woman evicting the cis Black men from a Zania house at UCT was a boiling point. Shortly after that, the trans students, disrupting and closing off the RMF exhibition was a boiling point. But all of those interventions almost always seem to die down, right? And nothing really comes of them, right? And so we sit here in December 2016, possibly faced with, additional protests in February and March 2017, without having done this important reflective work, right? And so I'm not quite sure what our position on that is and how we take it forward.
So, have a mic. So I also think it's important to note that activists are also intellectuals. They're organic intellectuals because they're intellectualizing from their experience, right? So writing about your experience is it's an act of activism. So when Black women write themselves into history, it's an act of activism. And I think to say that we have failed to reflect, I think doesn't encompass it all, because I think we failed to reflect completely because things happen so fast. But in those moments, there have been moments of resistance. There have been moments where we have been active activists in ensuring that we are reflected in history and that our experiences are known. So I think that it's important that we remember that we're not always, actively on the front lines, challenging the system, facing the police, but we're also intellectualizing everything that's happening and intellectualizing the responses that we receive from our resistance. So I think that, our writing and our writing are acts of activism. Definitely. Okay, so I think that, this space is sort of, I want to call it a flawless space. We've made it a flawless space. I don't think anyone in this room disagrees. So thank you for being a part of the audience and reflecting on the past 2 years with us, but also for being part of the imagining, right? A lot of the time, man has been the one who imagines, who reasons, who is the voice. And so it's such a privilege to be on the stage and to lead the imagining, but to also lead in a way that opens the space up for you guys to also lead with us. So we're going to open the panel up for comments, reflections. I'm sure there are a lot of activists in the space. And I don't think you have to be in the front lines to be an activist. I think merely being in this space, in this writing space, I think that Abantu in itself is writing against something, and we need to speak about what that is. So we're going to open up the space for any questions, comments.
Okay. Just to clarify, you can speak in any language, any language that you find on this continent. I think we've learned to communicate with each other, so feel free to communicate. We don't need to be speaking Gaskwa, which gives us power cuts all the time for no reason. So please speak in. You don't have to. I know they sound extremely intelligent and they're intellectualizing, but whatever comes from your heart, with respect and love, always. So what I'm going to do, because we just have one mic, we're going to do 2 rounds of questions. 2 rounds of what? 3 hands? 3, 4 hands? Or we're going to do 3 rounds?
2 rounds.
2 rounds, 3 hands. Okay, we'll see if we have any extra time. If we can have any hands up for who would like to speak. And perhaps what we might do is that, I'm sorry to make you queue because black people are always in queues, but if you can just come here, and that would just be easier because I don't want to stop with a lovely recording happening here right now in this session. Are they so clear that no one has any questions, no thoughts? So that's one there. Any other hand? There are no women who have hands. There's something that I always do that without fail, and sorry I'm going to do this to you, without fail in these spaces, it is always men who speak first. Without fail, listen to radio, come to the panel, watch today. I want you to observe and we'll talk in the evening. See who puts their hand up first. Maybe they'll be a bit shy now that I've said it. But just observe who are the first people to speak. And that's something we need to change and challenge, the issue of being silenced. We spoke about this last night as well as writers, that black women are always being silenced. And it's not now, it's a historical moment that constitutes it. Any other hands? I'm going to nominate some people who are here because I know there's some activists that I know. There's one, okay. There's some activists that I know who I think they would be great to also just give a few reflections. I think Sivu was here. No? Where is she? Yeah, there she is. I'm putting her on the spot. Actually, so I'm going to start with Umme over there. You're going to be our first one, and then we're going to put Sivu over there. We had Koleka was busy and writing all the time just now, so I think she has something to say, and then Dati will have your reflection, and that will constitute the first round of questions. Are you happy with that? Okay. All right.
I like it. And I'm going to lead the way for young people. I'm sorry we have just come in. I'm with Dumela Mufokeng. I'm with Sandy Mufokeng here, my husband and one of the contributors to development of literature by black photographers, artists, authors. And we need to say these things in these spaces because our people are known abroad, but amongst ourselves they are lesser known. But we also standing because what you are doing today is what we lived through 1976, 77 with Medupi Writers Association. Our poetry was never material for publishing, but we spoke out. And that's where I met my husband. So don't be jealous about that. So do not be surprised. He doesn't have his speech, but his works speak for him. And we hope that in the next round of the festival, we will honor this generation by also sharing his works. That will be his speech. And we hope amongst here will be scholars that will be interested in his photographic works and his essays. For that, we congratulate those that saw the vision. And Aluta continua. Thank you.
Can I just note, I was meant to say this earlier. This hall is the Sandy Ndelu hall. The hall over there is the Miriam Tladi space over there as well. We're going to have women of letters. So just to let you know, we're very active, at least in Abantu. We don't have to say that this is a feminist festival because it's happening. We do the work and you'll see it goes without saying. So please honor that. When you say you're going to Abantu, say, yes, I was in the Sandy Ndelu hall and I was listening to the feminists speaking. So just a note on that.
Thank you. I think it's so awkward that you put me on the spot. So I really wanted to commend the black women of the Fallis movement. I think it is super important that black women in South Africa begin to create a movement that is for black women, right? And Fallism was so important in igniting that energy of believing that we can show up for one another. And I think we spend so much time, which is also important work, agonizing about what is problematic, what can we do, instead of just doing it, right? Instead of just doing it and make the mistakes. And that's why Abantu is so important, that it has to happen, you know? And so I'd really appreciate maybe, even after the space, where black women come together and say, you know, okay, now that we have this problem, now that we had 1956, that was great and we're still celebrating it, what are we doing in this current generation for our own movements, for our own programs, and also how we're ensuring that we capture some of the things that were spoken about in such a way that we have a collective of people that are writing, that are rioting, that are dancing, that are crying, that are mourning in a black womanist spaces that feel safe and loved and guarded, to ensure that we create a project that moves forward. Because as Sandy had said, there's some boiling points that happen. You know, when we created for Black Girls Only, for instance, it was an important project. But after that, you know, we can't actually hold something together, and it's really important for us to hold space for one another to reimagine this collective future that we want. And so thank you to Fallism for that.
Can I just say something about Sivu? Sivu is the founder of For Black Girls Only. And I just want to say, we don't get right at this moment as Abantu by ourselves. First of all, if there was no Fallism, we probably wouldn't have Abantu. Tando said it yesterday. On top of that, spaces like For Black Girls Only, do you know the amount of abuse that they went through to say that we want to have a space where we love ourselves, for ourselves, by themselves? But she stuck it out. She said, I'm going to do this. It's going to be a labor of love for us. And because of people like her being unapologetic, it makes it easier for us when we say we're going to do a festival for black writers and readers. People are now just, okay, well, you know, this is now the status quo. So again, black women are always doing the work, always leading us, and we don't always remember the work that they do. So I just really want to honor you. You've done amazing work in Cape Town as well, particularly with the queer spaces in Cape Town. You've done such amazing work, and we can burn and we can build, and the burning and building is the same things at the same time. So thank you very much, Sivu. You're really, really important for the work that you're doing. So thank you for your presence. Someone who's also, and again, this is not just me a feel-good moment. I think it's important. So you don't always have to say we commend Abantu. It's okay. It doesn't have to be that. But Koleka also is a wonderful poet who's going to be performing tonight, an amazing poem called Water, and she has something, and then that is going to be there. That's going to be in our first round. We're going to do the second round.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, this is awkward. I think, is it okay if I sit with everything that you guys have said? Thank you for this session. I think I'd like to reflect a bit more. Yeah, but thank you.
Thank you. Ndate, can I give you the mic?
I think you did very well by giving other speakers first to say something and ending up with me to close this round. I think I normally say something for a reason, and I also believe that whatever I'm saying, it also impact on what you're saying in terms of your future, in terms of your assignment. How did I come to know? Firstly, I saw you on Morning Live, and I was just about to do something, but I listened to you, the story you're saying, and very similar to what my daughter is talking about. And I waited for her to wake up, and I said to her, look, can you check the program on Morning Life? It seems what you're talking about, there are people who think like you. And she quickly went on the Google thing, you know what I'm saying? And she came back to me very excited. And that's why we're here all the way from the Free State. But why am I talking assignment? I'm talking assignment on two things. Firstly, we know our history. We know how women were involved in the history. But today also we know that they always have a cap in their hand for promotion, for being campaigned to. Now the assignment I'm talking about is, what do you think you're doing something differently? Because I'm sitting here and listening to you, because I'm listening to my daughter every day. She once said to me, look, I'm getting frustrated. I said, why? She said, my peers can't understand the language I'm speaking. And then I'm looking at you. That's why I'm saying, are you not talking this? Because there's a lot happening. You'll forgive me. I don't talk for people just to forget me. You don't seem to forget me. You will remember. I mean, you will, because I don't believe in coincidence. I believe in something that you do and change. And I've listened to you. You talk about now, and you talk about your impact on what you are doing. That's what impresses me. You don't just say, you don't just talk for us here, but you also talk for those who are not here. So that's why I'm saying, for me, the assignment I think I'm giving you is that, what do you think you are doing something different than those mothers who have done today? We have liberation, but they have to have their cap on hand and say, we want to campaign for so and so, and then they change Bo Mama, then they change their story, and then they run after men and worship them. So what is the difference? That's what I know. As long as I know what is the difference, then I will believe an occasion like this can effect any change come future. Lastly, I got shocked. That's one credit I want to give you. Credit, it's a shock. For my shock. The shock is that when I came here for the first time at the occasion, I see the ladies, they are calling the shot. You know, that was my shock, and that's for the credit. And I'm happy that I came with my daughter here, because that in itself created an image. The first impression lasts. Whatever happened afterwards, but you have already made a statement. Thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna firstly respond to Ume Puitumelo. So what colonization did was to deny us our history, to deny us of the genealogy of black talent, black thinkers, black creators. So thank you for standing up and highlighting the work of your husband, because now we can come to you and ask more questions and have an additional reference point, so that we can be proud, to be black, because we have black people like, I forgot his name, so Sandy Mufukeng, who were able to create under difficult circumstances. So thank you for highlighting that. We have an additional reference point. To speak to respond to Sibu's question and call, like Anasha, I am greatly inspired by Sibu every day, although I might not say this every day, but we're watching and we are inspired and we are moved. Sibu highlights an important fact, that the fact that South Africa has no black feminist movement has resulted in many forms of oppression or continued forms of oppression against black women. So Shireen Hassim, black feminist academic, and Khuna Kola in Rape, the South African nightmare, both reflect on the fact that the absence of a black feminist movement is the reason why, for instance, rape, hasn't been placed on a national agenda as much as it should be. The fact that black lesbian women's murders continue to be unaccounted for, continue to not have a social cost or legal cost, and other issues. The reason why the ANC government can propose the traditional courts bill that will further deny black women's access to land, because in some cultures or traditional leaders, believe that black women are not allowed to own land. This bill was proposed in democratic South Africa, but black women stopped it. But those voices were not amplified. That struggle is not on mainstream media because it's a continuous struggle. Maybe can I have the mic? So we do need a black feminist movement, and we are building the black feminist movement. To refer to what Mbali said earlier, is that we need to acknowledge what we're doing. The fact that you did for black girls only, the fact that we have Umanyano, the fact that we have 1 in 9, the fact that we have, Fallism, the fact that we had all new references that spread throughout the country, it means that the black feminist, there's an urge and a hunger for this black feminist movement. The ground is fertile. It's just up to us just to continuously coming together as we do, because we do meet. We are trying, and we need to acknowledge that, and we need to pat ourselves on the back, because I know, being a black woman and wanting, we love giving of our labor too much in a way that always compromises ourselves. We never acknowledge the work that we do. So you are doing what you said we must do, Sivo, and other black women in the space. Ubaba asked, what are we doing differently? I just want to, share that me and Sandy are co-editing a black feminist journal called Agenda, and we just put out the call for abstract yesterday for less black women to submit, and it's on our Twitter accounts, Facebook, and we'd like to share that call, and we'd like for black women to respond. I just want to caution that I know academic journals may scare us a bit because we think of the peer-reviewedness. But this journal, we want different forms of writing and different forms of archiving. So you can literally have a conversation like this with your friend or your comrade, record it, transcribe it, and send it to us. And that could be published. You can literally review a book, review Abantu, and that could be published. You can literally speak from your lived experience, and that could be published. Because writing, there's been a certain legitimized form of writing, form of intellectualism. And to decolonize, to really truly decolonize, we need to decolonize that elitism, that classism, that comes with what is regarded as, academic or worthy knowledge production. Because I don't know if it was Mbali or Sandy said, we are organic thinkers. It's our lived reality. We don't have to, for instance, white academics will come and study us white feminists who come and study us. White feminists have already written about Fees Must Fall. White academics have already, 3 books are out that I'm aware of. White people. And so, please send through abstracts. Please blog. And please, if you have, we always encourage this, if you need info about where to publish, how to publish, who to email, etc., 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 we are available after this conversation to share some of those contacts and networks. So yeah, that's it from me.
Let's see if this works. Okay, so I'm going to address Sibu's question, and I think it also ties into. I think it also ties into Baba's question, which is, what do you think we're doing differently? So I agree with Sima that the ground is fertile, but also patriarchy is a very real system, and there's a reason why black feminists, there isn't a black feminist movement in South Africa, or like one comprehensive black feminist movement. And it's because, patriarchy is this structure that changes face, right? But, I mean, the behaviors are the same, but it changes to adapt to our new context. So, in democratic South Africa, patriarchy looks a little bit different. And so, we have rights, and there is the Constitution, and supposedly there is gender equality in Parliament. So we are there. I mean, what are we complaining about? So that's the ways in which patriarchy has changed its face. It seems like the feminist movement has addressed patriarchy by putting particular words on paper, but how that plays out into our lives it's not the same. There's this huge disparity between reality and legislation, and that's where we are now. And I think the black feminist movement will be actually challenging all of this legislation and saying that, yeah, fine, you have, the Domestic Act, or you have, there's a ministry, I mean, there's a gender, what is it, Department of Women in the presidency, which is not really there, but it's there. We're not sure what it does. So, gender is not, or gender equality is not necessarily a priority in this country. And the violence that black women experience is not a priority in this country. And I think the Jacob Zuma rape trial is indicative of all the things that have not been addressed in this country, and how black women continue to kind of experience particular injustices, and we turn a blind eye to what is taking place. So I think this year has been a year of reflection. It's been 10 years, and I think that is hitting a lot of black feminists, and that is kind of informing the sense of urgency to form that black feminist movement. And to answer your question of what are we doing differently, and I think we've taken a lot of time to look within, and that's important, because everything outside of us says that we're there. The laws, the institutions, supposedly, gender mainstreaming has been, it's in every policy, but it doesn't, you don't see how that plays out in our lives. And so I think we're looking within, and we're being honest about our reality. And I think that will inform the feminist movement that will form. And to comment on Kollega, I think she spoke like a true writer. It's important to reflect, and it's important to also respect that
we shouldn't be forced to speak. I think we all have a sense of agency, and so I kind of applaud her for using that agency. Although there's a particular history and we're trying to challenge it, I'm also aware that there's a sense of agency, and we need to use that and be aware of that as writers. And so reflection is good. Reflection informs writing. So thank you very much for that comment.
Thank you, Mbali. So perhaps to speak to what Sibu was saying, and to use Mbali's example of the Jacob Zuma rape trial as a departure point, I think one of the things that we saw during the Jacob Zuma rape trial was that black women remain, right, and this is true 10 years ago and it's still true today, remain incredibly fragmented, right? There was an enormous contingent of black women who were ready to use their bodies, their lives to defend, a rapist, right? And that was because there were other interests playing, right? And that perhaps in those instances, in that context, perhaps the feminist cause wasn't the priority for those women, right? And for me, I've been trying to think and work through the reality of perhaps there's at the current moment, there's no meeting point. Right, and in order to start, walking on a road towards a feminist movement, there has to be linkages. There has to be, common departure points. And I've been struggling to find those. Right. So even within the feminist movement, what does it mean to say that we're attempting to cultivate? We're honestly attempting to cultivate a feminist movement. Where there are instances where we're incredibly violent to one another, where we're queerphobic, where we're classist, where we're transphobic, where we side with black cishet men who are very toxic in the performance of their masculinities, instead of showing solidarity, love, and acquaintance to some of our own who have been at the receiving end of that. So perhaps the conversation which should come first is where are the ignition points, right? Where do we meet one another? Are we able? Is that realistic, right? And perhaps does the feminist movement necessarily have to be a mass movement of the black women in this country, on this continent, right? Perhaps it's the small enclaves, but are those enough? And as Mbali said earlier on, there does seem to, there are numerous feminist enclaves, and we can chart them across the the country and across the continent, but there still seems to be a gap, right? And I think we're all still a bit hungry for something more. We're kind of missing something which speaks to us in complete and fuller ways. So how do we move towards that?
So the time now is 11:30, but I think we can allow ourselves one more round. But this time, I promise I'm not going to interject or whatever, no matter how much I love the person. So literally one contribution, right? One question, short, sharp, and to the point. And we'll also then get, as you respond, you'll just wrap up. So we're going to get just 10 minutes. And please, short, sharp questions from the floor. So I have recognized, the first hand I saw was yours. 1, 2, 3. Cool, just 3.
Hello, my name is Tabizo. I'm from the University of Pretoria. And I was just wondering, during the Afro-Pantsima fall protest, there was a lot of black people who the rhetoric was that we are privileged to be why are we fighting this? This is their school, this is their language, this was the first language that was taught here. And we were at conflict. So how do you resolve that conflict? How do you start a conversation where we can engage and get to a point where we realize that this is a black fight and we want to be included in those structures? Thank you.
Morning. Thanks a lot, ladies. So I think just before giving my question, I'd like to say just thank you that the book festival is happening in Kokasi, because Mokasi and a lot of things in Mokasi, and then how it's like we forget. And I mean, this kind of contextualizes my question. So within the movement, how do we make sure that the movement is very inclusive? And I mean, I hold myself accountable because you know, how Mokasi, but what was I queer? Because I couldn't. So how do we make sure that in writing is rioting, that we include as well our languages?
Hi, my name is Lufu. I'm from UCT. I use they, them pronouns. So I wanted to ask, especially when you're speaking of the process of, I think Sandy said this, deliberate writing with the intention of creating a reference point in history, right? What do you think is like the role of fiction, for instance? And like the way that fiction can foster inclusivity, even like beyond university spaces, like so it's not just academia. And then especially taking into consideration like the rise of Afrofuturism in South Africa. And also, is there a role for writing in the way that we need to decolonize the way that blackness is gendered? And what do you think are the effects of like our gross centralization of the gender binary in the way that we write?
Okay, Tepiso. I remember I was at UP when Afrikaans Must Fall was happening, and I was shocked at the sense of entitlement of white people, like how they are able to claim land where they are settler colonialists. So I think the first, so you asked how do you resolve this conflict? And my question is that we need to look back to history. First of all, understand that this is our land, right?
Amen.
So no white person can say they built anything, that this is theirs, because it's not. They are settlers. They colonialized us violently. They murdered our people. They used our labor to build all of this, So that's how you firstly resolve the conflict, by making sure that people understand the historical context of this country and why Afrikaners, white, South Africans who are, of European descent, English descent, can say that they own ish, that this ish is theirs, right? So that's the first point. Secondly, when Roads Must Fall began, their manifesto, which I'm very proud of, stated that UCT was built on slave labor, that it must recognize that, right? So what whiteness does through its project of colonialism is to deny the contributions of black people, or the contributions of black people's labor, imaginations, etc. And so the reason why black people can say that is because that's how well the project worked, for us to even believe that lie. So to say it again, I think maybe in the conversations that we have with those black people that are saying those things, is to remind them of their history. Yeah, to just respond. And then Uzinhle, brilliant question. Because language is also a reflection of colonialism, of power, of authority, of exclusion, and inclusion. And so I have to confess that I was on Mhlobo and I had to speak about decolonization in Xhosa. And my dad called me afterwards. He's like, "Oh, undihlazi." I embarrassed him because, and he was like, and then I was like, "Dad, you don't need decolonization as Xhosa." And then he gave me a word that I forgot. But
which challenged me, and I love that because he held me accountable. He's like, Joaz, like Xhosa books. When I get home, I need to read those. I need to refamiliarize myself with that language. So your question is holding us accountable, and that work we need to do, often. And secondly, I just want to share an amazing project. So there is a movement called Ndinga in Eastern Cape, in Gayskamahawk, of rural activists, rural movements, and I've visited them a couple of times. And in this movement, there is a black feminist school, and they are working on a project of building like a book that will not only translate black feminist literature into Xhosa, but it will also develop new languages, because language expands. We create language. So if there are people that say Ndoni, maybe queer in Xhosa, or they could say, what is heteronormativity in Xhosa? And so if language limits us, if there are no words in our languages that define forms of or systems of oppression, or systems or tools for liberation, let's create them. Because language, we create language. So let's engage in that imaginative project of creating language too. Lungile, I love your question. Of the role of fiction. And I want to tell you something that I recently learned. So I was doing a course on slavery with Prof. Gola just now. And so, unlike the United States of America, black women and black people wrote their slave narratives. So now we have slave narratives that people can read from first person experience. But in South Africa, we don't have that. Through erasure, through many, different reasons. But black women like Yvette Abrams, like Zoe Wickup, have created fiction using slave memory and black women's history. So through using archival records and historical records, and the imagination, they were able to imagine these black women into being through fiction. So let's engage in that imaginative project of creating language too. Lungile, I love your question. Of the role of fiction. And I want to tell you something that I recently learned. So I was doing a course on slavery with Prof. Gola just now. And so, unlike the United States of America, black women and black people wrote their slave narratives. So now we have slave narratives that people can read from first person experience. But in South Africa, we don't have that. Through erasure, through many, different reasons. But black women like Yvette Abrams, like Zoe Wickup, have created fiction using slave memory and black women's history. So through using archival records and historical records, and the imagination, they were able to imagine these black women into being through fiction. So fiction is very important. It's an important political project. Even in Toni Morrison's The Site of Memory, and how when she writes about slavery and slave narratives, she says that because of erasure, because there's so much silence, there's so much that has been forgotten, she uses her imagination. And that's a bridge. So if you're a fiction writer, if anyone is a fiction writer, I value and I encourage you to continue imagining us into being. Thank you.
I'm also going to be praying. So thank you for your question. And I also just want to add on to what Sima was saying, right? So I think what has to be coupled with, a historical awareness of dispossession on this continent, of landlessness, of humanlessness, right? I think also perhaps an exposition of our current lives and livelihoods has to accompany that, right? And I think perhaps it makes it more easier to digest when you can actually point to specific things and say, because of the University of Pretoria and how that infrastructure has been upheld, we can see that our current situation as Black people is affected by that, right? That university is upheld, by Black workers who are currently, modern day slaves, right? And who are being sold to external parties who are only concerned about profits, right? And this is how also the Fees Must Fall movement and end outsourcing have in many ways bridged that gap between history and our current, right? We're saying that, we may speak about decolonization and we may contextualize it, and speak about the history of how the University of Cape Town came to be and how it came to give, for example, Cecil John Rhodes so much prominence, but we can also relate that to our current livelihoods in terms of we simply cannot afford fees and we're expected to pay, and our mothers and fathers are having to slave, on the grounds of UP and UCT. Okay. And then perhaps Zinhle and Lungila's questions can almost be, collapsed into one. So for me, and this has been troubling, because it's especially if we're activists in particular spaces, it's a troubling realization to admit and to recognize that we remain colonial subjects ourselves, right? And in many ways, we're bogged down in the system, and freeing ourselves from it is incredibly difficult, requires an incredible amount of work. But it's, I think part of the decolonization project is committing ourselves to that work and doing it with commitment and resilience. And so when it comes to language, it's important for us to almost backtrack the effects of colonialism and neocolonialism in centering the English language in everything that we do. We have to backtrack in terms of the gender binary in centering, it in everything we do. And it's incredible amounts of work that I think we should do as Black people, have a responsibility to do to sustain the revolution and our lives.
Okay, I'm going to be very brief. Tepiso, sorry. I cannot add much to what Sandy and Sima have said. I definitely think, the land is ours, and they can't even contest that. And so I think people who are made to feel like they're privileged to be in particular spaces, I think have not realized where we are right now, the consciousness of other Black people, and I think it's a task for us to ensure that Black people who are holding up the system, the white supremacist system, but the other systems connected to it as well, are conscientized, and that's a lifelong task. So just to comment on languages, I want to share a very brief experience about a panel that I was on in March at Time of the Writer, and it was an amazing moment of reimagining and putting in theory into our own indigenous languages. And there was a 15-year-old girl. We sort of explained what intersectionality was, and she just took a second and was like, I have a word for this. And she's like, ukuhlangana bobuntu. And she encompassed the whole theory in, the African philosophy. And we can have conversations about what that means outside of Black spaces. But what she really encompassed in that term was that it's the coming together of different aspects of our Ubuntu, and that's intersectionality. So we can imagine that language, and I think my personal task has been kind of writing out English. So that code switching until it's just Zulu. So that's been how I've been trying to reclaim theory within our African languages. And I think theory is not an English thing. We can apply theory to our own indigenous languages. And so I'm gonna just end off on that. And I think that, fiction, I have to comment on fiction. Would you allow me just a minute? So I don't believe in fiction as a finite thing. I think that there's a lot of truth in fiction, and so a lot of Black women wrote fiction, such as Loretta Nobles. They wrote fiction, but it was talking about how we were dispossessed and how our land was taken away. But it was framed in a way in which she could tell the story truthfully, but without necessarily inserting herself in the narrative. She was talking about some of her life, but it's not clear where reality ends and where fiction comes in, and that's the beauty of fiction, right? So I'm going to end off with a call to action for all the Black feminists in the room. I think that in the conversation that we've had, it's clear that there's an urgency for us to do something. And I think we can use the space here at Abantu to come together and to think and to imagine what a Black feminist movement would look like now. And that's not to say it must be young. It can be intergenerational, and we can talk about how those dynamics can be constructive. Thank you very much for coming and listening to us and imagining ourselves into existence.
Thank you very much to our wonderful panelists. I think you'll agree that we couldn't have had a better start to Abantu Book Festival. And just to historicize, time of the writer, her name was Zandile Manzini. All the historicists here write her name. Her name was Zandile Manzini. I actually have her on my Twitter, so I was writing there. And I even have a picture of her. So I'll take a screenshot later today and put it up. Her name is Zandile Manzini. She was 18, and this was at Inan. I think this was a Katomana library, and there's a picture of her literally writing what she said, and that was really important because we actually sat down and we said to ourselves in that panel, how would we explain what we've just said to our families? So this is deliberate work that we need to do ourselves, to sit down and do that. So please, let's also give her the credit for the wonderful work that she did, Zandile Manzini, as an example of the work that we need to do. So thank you very much. Wonderful women, wonderful people. As you said, we need to break the gender binary. Just one thing to note again with this is that next year our theme is languages. So please start thinking throughout the festival how we can do this as well, how we can make sure. Language is everything. It's not just speaking from Zulu to English. It's also sign language in many different ways. We need to communicate in Braille and those kind of things. So start thinking because the work needs to be done. But it also, as much as you're thinking about next year, we're here right now, and let's also enjoy the festival. We just have our next session is Mbali Matandela. I'm really looking forward to the questions on land, very, very important, particularly talking about Black women and land. That's important. We're also going to have just a quick announcement from NIHSS. That is a foundation, the National Institute for Social Sciences, Human and Social Sciences, who is a sponsor of Abantu Book Festival. But these are the very practical ways in which you can begin to access, publishing, to get funding, because again, we're landless people, you need money to do this research, and these are the organizations that you're entitled to use and to work with in order to make sure that we can action this. So it's no better sign their commitment to this by sponsoring Abantu Book Festival, and they sponsor a number of our featured writers are there. For example, Punakola, we have Tola Manu, for example, and he's not actually on this, but Lufu Malungani, I think he's also one of the people on it. But please, you go to their stall, but they're going to just give you 1 minute here. Before we then go out and buy from African Flavor Books and then come back in time for our discussion, Land and Liberation with Lebohang Peko and Dade Dihang Musaneke.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for the opportunity. I'm actually going to give you 30 seconds, not a 1 minute. We are from, my name is Tarren. We are from the National Institute for the Humanities and Social Sciences. What we do, we promote scholarships in human social sciences by sponsoring postgraduate students and mentoring them. I'm here to give you a bit of a good news. For us, it is a bit of a good news because we launched the NIHSS Awards, the Book Creative and Digital Awards, this year in March. And we are having the second awards in 2017, next year in March. We are currently calling for publishers and authors to join in on the awards. The current call for 2017 closes on the 19th of December. But we can negotiate, an extension with. I've got my colleague here, Utabo could not talk because number one, he's not female, and he's black, but he's not female, and he is available at our store there. You will be eligible to enter if you need to be. How you can enter? You need to be affiliated with a university. You need to be studying. You need to have co-authored. You need to have produced work for the universities, and you need to have produced and published a book. Your book should have come out in between January 2014 and December 2015. So if your book was published in 2016, you'll be eligible to enter for the awards in 2018. And that's about it. And currently, please ladies, currently we have only one black lady that entered the awards. We're encouraging all black ladies, please, to enter these awards. Thank you.
We're going to challenge her to do an award for unpublished black writers, and not just those of us who are affiliated to colonial institutions that are built by slave labor. But anyway, thank you very much. Once again, thank you to the wonderful panelists. Thank you to the audience. I think the spirit, I could not have hoped for a better way to start Abantu Book Festival. We're really proud and full of love, and thank you very much for this session. And bring that same fire for the next one that's going to start in about 15 minutes. We're just going to do sound check, and then we're ready to go and get the land back. Yes.